I would like to introduce you to Ken Wall, a very godly man and my dad.
Today is Sunday, March 29th, 2026. My sister-in-law bought me this t-shirt a couple years ago, and it really is true. Nothing is more super than Darlene, the love of my life. Though, right now, Darlene is taking me to task as she says I have a drinking problem. I have to admit that this has been the case for as long as I can remember. The thing is that I love drinking and I never get enough of it. Now, of course, your mind immediately goes to alcohol, but that is not the case. Ever since I was a baby, I have been labeled a milkaholic, as you can see from my picture. I don't know why, but I have never liked tea or coffee, but I sure love drinking milk. And anyone who I'm acquainted with knows this. For example, our church has a lot of potluck suppers. During the meal, most often a woman named Sadie would go up and down the aisles offering people tea or coffee. I always got a kick out of when she comes to where I'm sitting. She will always say, "Oh, don't worry, Ken. I will get your milk for you in just a minute." That always makes me feel good inside that she remembers that I love drinking milk. When Darlene retired, we decided to do a bucket list trip, and we greatly splurged and flew first class to Tel Aviv on a Boeing 777. The ones that have the separate pods. I have to tell you that I was in seventh heaven. The wonderful thing for a lot of people was that they could drink as much alcohol as they wanted. But for me, I found out that I could drink as much milk as I wanted. That was just wonderful. As I was disembarking the plane, the flight attendant who served me all throughout the trip took me aside and said, "I have never seen anyone drink as much milk as you did." I laughed and I said that I simply love drinking milk. Another thing that I love doing is reading my Bible. Darlene and I go through the Bible once a year using this particular reading plan. Over the course of my life, I have read through the entire Bible many times, but the wonderful thing is I keep reading things that I don't remember from previous readings. Let me give you an example. In Isaiah chapter 20, verse 3, it says, "Then the Lord said, just as my servant Isaiah has gone stripped and barefoot for 3 years as a sign to portent against Egypt and Cush." I didn't remember this reading at all. When I read about Isaiah going naked and barefoot for 3 years, I thought, that would be just quite awful. I also love reading the Song of Solomon because it extols marriage, intimacy, and romantic love. And I love reading how Solomon so vividly describes his bride. In chapter 1, verse 15, Solomon says, "Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful." And he repeats this in chapter 4 and then goes on to describe all her body parts. So I got the bright idea to paraphrase all of them in regards to Darlene. I think I did a great job, and Dar loved my descriptions, though she thought I was a little bit silly. Well, take a look at chapter 4 yourself and see how you would describe the different body parts in your own words. On a similar note, the story of love in the life of Jacob is wonderfully described in the Bible. Jacob's father-in-law tricked him into taking the older daughter Leah in marriage as compared to the love of his life, Rachel. In order to have Rachel as his wife, Jacob had to serve 7 years for her. This is wonderfully summed up in Genesis 29, verse 20. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. I often quoted this verse during the time from my engagement to when we got married. My love for Darlene is growing over the years we have been married, and this coming May 13th, I will have the privilege of being married to my only true love for 48 years. And just for interest's sake, Dara already has plans made for our 50th. You can tell from how I describe Darlene that she is a wonderful wife, but I get a kick out of Proverbs 21, verse 19, where it says, it is better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife. In fact, you can go online and buy t-shirts that say, keeping it desert free. Very often at night, our family plays a particular board game called Alhambra. And there is myself, Darlene, her sister, who lives with us, and my two daughters. If one of them buys a tile before I can, I often say, better to live in the desert than with all these women who take the tile that I really wanted. But the truth is that I really like having everyone around. Keeping on the theme of love, the book of Ruth for me is so very enjoyable to read. I've read this book so many times, and yet I still love reading it. In it has the most famous verse that has been quoted in countless marriages over the century. Ruth 1:16 says, where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. You got to admit that is a beautiful verse. This is all I'm going to say about this. I hope you too will love reading your Bible as much as I do. May the good Lord be with you until we meet again next week.